I can't decide who to choose for this final. It's gotta be a person, someone who challenged societal norms, someone whose work changed how theater is perceived.
I win.
Jonathan Larson was born on February 4, 1960 in Mount Vernon, New York. Starting at a very early age, music was a big part of Jonathan's life. He sang, acted, and played various musical instruments. His favorite artists and later musical influences include big names such as Elton John, Billy Joel, Prince, and the Beatles. Jonathan also greatly admired famous musical composer Stephen Sondheim, who later became a mentor to him. Larson got an education at Adelphi University, earning a BFA in acting as well as experience starring in many theatrical productions. Eventually, he switched his focus from performing to composing, setting him down the path of success. His early days of composition consisted of writing the music for small student productions and cabarets, one of which did well and graduated from the Adelphi stage to a small off-Broadway theater, earning him and his co-creator his first writing award. After his own graduation, Larson earned his equity card playing piano at a summer stock theater program in Michigan. In 1983, he moved to New York to focus solely on his writing. His sister quoted him as saying he wanted to change the face of American musical theater. No one knew how prophetic his words truly were.
Initially, Larson wanted to write a musical based on George Orwell's novel, 1984, but he was denied permission to do so. So, he then began work on his own science fiction musical, which he titled Superbia. Superbia was set in a futuristic society where people's emotions are erased at birth. The story follows Josh, who retained his emotions due to a complication at birth, who then dedicated the rest of his life to inventing something that would restore society's emotions. It was a rather dark piece that examined the power of emotions and society's reliance on technology. Stylistically, it foreshadowed Larson's later musical, Rent. It was his first major attempt to integrate popular music genres within musical theater. The production was developed in workshops over the course of 6 years, where Larson received feedback on the show. The biggest advocate for the show was Stephen Sondheim, who helped Larson refine the show and receive funding for it. But even after multiple workshops and readings, the show was never produced. The content of the show was considered too risky for producers, as it might be unpalatable for the average audience. It also required complicated audio systems due to its musical rock style, and at the time, no Broadway theater was equipped to handle it. Seems like the musical theater world wasn't quite ready for Jonathan Larson. Or well, not yet at least.
The lights dim, people whisper. The darkness is pierced by a blinding... I never knew 30 candles could make so much light.
After Superbia, Larson began production of his next show, which was initially titled 3090. After his death, it was then renamed Boho Days, and then finally to Tick Tick Boom. Tick Tick Boom was a semi-autobiography of Larson's life, drawing on his feelings of rejection and disappointment in the industry. It tells the story of an inspiring composer named John, living in New York, who regrets his choice of career path as he nears his 30th birthday with nothing to show for his efforts. It also shows the main character's struggle to navigate friendships and love at a pivotal time in his life. The show was not produced until after his death in 2001, when it premiered at an off-Broadway theater. Tick Tick Boom was singular for the way it revealed the draining and often messy process of creating musicals. It celebrated the perseverance and creativity one must have to be an artist. Amongst Larson's personal papers revealed a quote that summed up his thesis for Tick Tick Boom. How does one turn one's life into a work of art?
In the early 90s, Larson began the project that would become his most successful and critically acclaimed. He collaborated with Billy Aronson, who wanted to create a musical based off of the 1896 opera La Bohème by Puccini. Rent was workshopped for years before finally being produced on a Broadway stage in 1996. Rent is a rock musical combining contemporary music styles with the conventions of musical theater to create a unique piece that changed the world of American musical theater forever. The story tells of a friend group of struggling artists in New York City during the AIDS epidemic. It deals with very pertinent topics at the time, such as poverty, homelessness, and homophobia. It is a powerful story about love, death, and the importance of creating. Prior to Rent, there was little space on Broadway for young queer and people of color to tell their stories. It was one of the first musicals to feature a diverse cast and openly gay characters. The themes of rebellion against oppression spoke to a younger generation, making it wildly popular and giving it a lasting legacy.
And then he died. On January 25th, 1996, Larson died of an aortic aneurysm. in his own home the night before off-Broadway previews of the show Rent began. It is hypothesized that Larson suffered from Marfan syndrome, a condition where, if left untreated, can cause a tear in the aorta, the main blood vessel in which oxygen-rich blood can travel from the heart to the rest of the body. If diagnosed, Marfan syndrome can be treated. Jonathan was said to have experienced symptoms of Marfan syndrome and was sent to the emergency room 2 times, 4 days before his death, but the doctors misdiagnosed his symptoms and sent him back home.
1996 Tony Award for Best Book of a Musical goes to Jonathan Larson for Rent.
During the previews, Rent received critical acclaim from the masses, with tickets for the initial 5-week run selling out 24 hours after opening night. The show went on to run for over 12 years, with its last performance being on September 7, 2008. Rent was nominated for several awards, winning the Pulitzer Prize and 4 Tony Awards, including Best Musical. After his death, Larson's family and the Jonathan Larson Performing Arts Foundation created grants in his name, which would award and give financial support to emerging writers and composers in the theater industry. They also teamed up with the Marfan Foundation to raise awareness of the condition. In 2021, a movie on the musical Tick, Tick, Boom was made, which changed from the original performance to be an autobiography of Larson's life. The film was directed by Lin-Manuel Miranda and starred Andrew Garfield, receiving critical acclaim and several award nominations, including a Best Actor Oscar nomination for Garfield.
Jonathan Larson was incredibly ambitious in his own creative pursuits, and despite his flaws, the contributions that he had on the world of theater cannot be overlooked. The impact that Larson had on the theater community also speaks to the sad reality of many creative people who leave too soon. All of their passion, their drive to create, to tell stories and share them to the world, it all dies along with them. One can only imagine what a world with Larson still alive would look like. What else could he have made? What other ideas did he have that he never told anyone else? But it's also important to take his death as a sign that being creative is incredibly important. Creation and the imagination are such valuable things that humans are able to do. So even if one thinks that their creativity might not be appreciated, they should still do it. Sometimes it's important for people to write down their silly stories, to draw, to imagine, to express themselves, and simply be creative, even if no one else will get to see their work. Even if a person might not ever reach the acclaim of other famous artists or writers, people should still be creative just for their own sake, and to enjoy their creative capabilities that are so unique and special to each and every person on this planet. For so long, Larson struggled to receive the acclaim that he was aspiring for. Yet despite his failures, he remained determined. He never stopped creating, and without that passion, the musical world would have never gotten to know such an influential person like himself.